Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to How to Leverage Data to Tackle Changing Consumer Behavior. Today's special guests are Guy, GM of Zebra Analytics, Deborah Weinswig, CEO and founder of Coresight Research, David Aquino, former COO of SharkNinja, and Andrea Weiss, founding partner of the O Alliance. We'll now turn it over to Guy to kick off.
Hello. Hey, great to be here. Thank you for having me today. We're going to share the slide. And what I wanted to start with is just an introduction of Zebra technologies and then move to introduce our panelists and then start an amazing discussion that is ahead. Um, Zebra Technologies, a lot of people know the brand. We've been in business for 51 years. We started as a scanning and printing business 51 years ago. This is why we are Zebra. We call Zebra from a UPC perspective. About 7 years ago, we acquired Motorola, that acquired Symbol. And so today, we're well known for our number one position in hardware across kiosks, printers, RFID, mobile computing, and scanners. So a lot of retailers and supply chain are using all of our mobile computings and RFID readers and tags, etc. However, in the last 2 years, we moved into what we call the intelligence edge. And what we call the edge is the person at the edge, the person that actually do the work at the supply chain, at the warehouse, at the store, replenishing, clienteling, and have that Zebra device in front of them. And number one in asset intelligence and number one in retail analytics through organic and inorganic growth. That includes solutions like Zebra Savannah, SmartPack, SmartCount, MotionWorks proximity for COVID-19, actually identify people that works together and prevent any compliance, etc. And so today we're well known for software and hardware combined on what we call solution edge for retail, healthcare, and CPG manufacturing. With that, I'm very happy to have with me some fantastic industry leaders, industry in retail and CPG. But those leaders are unique, and they're unique because the advice and the discussion and the topics that you will hear today is something that you can take to heart and you can execute tomorrow. You can execute tomorrow to help your own companies to do better. And with that, I would like to have them introduce themselves. First one, Deborah Weinswig, please.
Thank you, Guy, and thanks for moderating an amazing panel today. I'm honored to be here with both David and Andrea. So at Coresight Research, we sit at the intersection of global retail, real estate, and technology. We offer both research and advisory insights to our clients. And what we're seeing, obviously, right now is an environment with unbelievable opportunity and change. And I think Guy is going to lead us through an amazing discussion today to focus on that.
Thanks, Deborah. David Aquino?
Morning, good afternoon. Great to be here. Thrilled to be part of the panel. I'm Dave Aquino, most recently the COO and CIO of SharkNinja. Prior to that, for about 6 years, I was the COO and CIO for an apparel and footwear company in Los Angeles. And living through this COVID experience, I think it puts every practitioner into a mode of how do we change, how do we adjust, and really excited to be part of the panel, certainly with you, Guy, Deborah, and Andrea.
Dave, and I excited to have you here on board. I know Dave from the time of AMR Research, long time ago, when he and the team coined the demand-driven supply network term, right?
Yes.
With us, one of my personal coach, Andrea Weiss, with a lot of experience in retail. Andrea?
Hey, good morning, Guy, and it's really great to be on the panel with Deborah and David, and welcome to all that have joined us. I am the founder of the O Alliance, which is a transformational consulting practice based in New York, and I'm very proud to have a global practice, and hopefully we'll be able to share a few insights from what we're seeing today. I come to this really from a long career in the retail space, and I currently serve on several public boards, including large box retailer, Bed Bath & Beyond, and an essential retailer, O'Reilly's Auto Parts. So we'll be sharing some thoughts from them as well.
Fantastic. And so we're going to discuss different things around traffic, around conversions, inventory accuracy, on shelf availability, but everything catered towards the consumers, which is basically curate assortment, curate services, which we touch every retailer. It doesn't matter if it's a quick service restaurant, a grocer, or an auto service part, right? Um, but just before that, some intriguing data that we collected from our customers. We're servicing in Zebra Technology all the pillars of retail. But specific pillar got me interested more than others after the COVID-19. I mean, we all know that grocery was an essential business and they stayed open over the month and the weeks of the COVID-19 pandemic. But if we think about fashion, the malls, etc., something pretty unique is happening there, and we want to be very optimistic looking in the future. And so we should look at what happened before the COVID-19 impact, through, and now. And when we look at traffic versus conversions, obviously through the middle of March and up until recently, those stores were closed. You could buy most of them over the internet on an online fashion. It would have been shipped to you from stores or from DCs, but not everywhere, not every store. Obviously, moms and pops had much more challenges than the big retailers. But what we've seen there when we aggregated all of the fashion traffic conversion is that uh, mostly recently the conversion have been much higher because of the trips. You do less trips to the mall, less trip to the shop because you don't want to risk yourself. But when you go there, you actually go with an intent, and that's pretty interesting to think about it. And if you go into with an intent, you better cater to their taste and cater to the customer so you can convert more. Another interesting parameter is unit per transactions. The number of units per transactions through the closeout were pretty high, and that's obvious because when you buy online, there's a lot of retailers that put a minimum dollars or minimum number of transactions for free shipping, and everyone likes free, and so you see that that was actually an increase. And now it's kind of back to baseline, which is pretty interesting. So you do go with an intent, you do buy, but you don't buy more units than before. And so I would like to ask the panel a little bit about it. So if you think about the past several months and the trends, and you're trying to have higher conversions, specifically in a face-to-face environment, but also online, and you try to have more units per transactions, what are your observation around it, and what should they do better? What should we do better in order to drive this change and capitalize on it? And I would like first to ask Andrea what you see in the industry.
Sure, Guy, thank you. Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to recognize that the changes that we're going to discuss today are really global changes. Guy has shared some data from U.S. consumers, but my clients run from Canada to Europe, hard-hit countries like Spain and Italy, and of course here in the United States. So this change that we're have underway is wide-reaching, and it's also has many permanent aspects to it. The essential retailers have had the benefit of having their doors open, but they're seeing fundamental shifts in how consumers are shopping with them and what their expectations are, and they're benefiting from things that they had perhaps in the works, but had on long digital runways for implementation. They've fast-tracked that in order to be able to provide better online pickup at curbside and those kinds of models. The stores that are in the phases of reopening, it's not an equal and democratic return. Fashion is having a much more sluggish return, but other industries are seeing exceeding their plans. One of my clients, for instance, who had developed quite a strict plan for their recovery period in order to have proper resources allocated, are beating those projections by 250 basis points. So consumers are definitely returning. They're returning in a different way, and I think that's what's at the root of Guy's data. I think you're seeing much more purposeful shopping, and I think that purposeful shopping is actually something that is going to stick with us. Those that were thinking of shopping as an entertainment and experiential activity, I think will have to read a lot of their strategies.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, and the curbside, and part of the question that I hear from a lot of executives is that would that shopping experience stay after the pandemic, right? Curbside, pick up in store, ship from store, etc. Deborah, what do you see from where you sit with speaking with all the executives?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We spoke with Alec Orlay from Walgreens recently, and it was fascinating because he said, right, the purpose of the drive-through historically had been to pick up prescriptions, but now they are allowing people to kind of shop the rest of the store. So, hey, to me as a consumer, that's a phenomenal. If I don't have to get out of my car, and I get to talk to, kind of a pharmacy tech about what I'm purchasing. So I do think that certainly from the consumer perspective, they'll want some of this to stay. From a retailer perspective, obviously there's significant challenges in some cases around the operations. But I do think that very much consistent with what Andrea was talking about is that this idea of more intentional shopping, and that when the consumer visits, right, they're already planning to convert. And the opportunity for the sales associate, right, that relationship will continue to grow in importance because the consumer now really wants advice, right? Which color looks better on me? What's the fit? They're coming in to ultimately decrease returns. So in some ways, this trip to the store ends up improving, kind of the sustainability of shopping, but also reducing returns. So in many cases, we could end up seeing, sales. I think certainly right now what we're seeing is above many retailers' expectations for this point in the crisis, and also too, as we're seeing more sustainable shopping and lower returns, right? Things are, I think, a little bit better than some had hoped for right now, and we're even starting to hear, thank goodness, some positivity around holiday 20. So, much remains to be seen, but definitely we do believe that a lot of these, and one other thing to mention, Guy, we're starting to see as well these relationships between the landlords and the tenants continue to evolve. And in many cases, tenants are asking landlords for dedicated spaces at malls and other shopping centers so that consumers can, if they're picking up or they're buying online, picking up in store, they have a dedicated space. And so we continue to see this evolution really of shopping, which I think some of it will last. And ultimately, people are social and they do like to be in stores with each other.
So
Yeah,
Deborah,
Guy?
just to add on to
Oh,
that
sorry. Yeah.
comment, the purposeful shopping is putting an increased importance on inventory and inventory accuracy because of exactly the things that you're describing. No one wants to make that purposeful trip and then find the thing that they intended to get is not in the bag when they pick it up at the curbside. So I think that is something that it was always important to be in stock. It now has actually an uber importance.
and I'll add on top of that, it's not just in stock, but it's in stock and in my car, and then in my car. Uh, just yesterday, I shopped from a restaurant at dinner for the family, and unfortunately, they forgot to put my French fries. Now, I'm very happy about that because I don't need that extra weight with the COVID-19. But they did forget it, right? And so, absolutely right. It's on the shelf, but it's also curated on the services to make sure that it's in your car. And I will quote Zebra's 2020 Global Shopper Study that talks about the fact that 40% of all respondents said that they will leave the store if they don't find what they came with intent to buy. Now, totally understand that it depends on the brand that they're going to shop. The French fries, I didn't ask the restaurant how they're making it. I'm just upset that it was not in my cart, right? But Dave, you're coming from a CPG manufacturer perspective. What do you recommend CPG do because of that changing traffic, as well as what we're just talking about on the on-shelf availability? Because you guys own that space. If you're P&G, if you're Colgate, if you're SharkNinja, it doesn't matter. You paid for that space on the shelf. You want to be able to manage it. Dave?
Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about just one quick thing that Deborah and Andrea mentioned. about the changing shopping habits. I mean, I saw somebody at the Albertsons the other day, I think it wandered in and was trying to bring a return of a coffee creamer. And he was just wandering around saying, I want to return this. You can't return it. Once you touched it, you left the building. And the guy was just literally nonplussed as to what to do. And he just left it at the end of the shopping stand. And everybody's looking bewitched as to what the hell is this guy doing? So I think the messaging and the communication, the simplification of shopping, the confidence of having product on shelf is really important. I think that we're hearing from, from businesses alike, it's not just enough to say you have it in inventory. You have to be 100% confident that it's there, that it's been merchandised properly, that people can find it. How many shoppers are going to come back to your store effectively taking some calculated risk and continue to find that not only their product that they were coming in for is not available, but the management and the store personnel don't know when it's coming in. I think that's incredibly frustrating. So I think the quality and precision of being able to have the right messaging in store and to create the right shopping experience where it's safe, it's secure, it's productive, I think is incredibly important. And there's never been more of a time where technology has needed to be married to store operations.
Yeah, and I agree.
I saw a real risk to brands and to retailers in actually preserving brand loyalty because of out of stocks. So one of the things that COVID did is it created scarcity on a lot of products. And so in many cases, we went to a store and we didn't find the brand we have historically purchased. And we then were forced by the situation to actually do a brand switch. A brand switch is never a good thing for the CPG folks. We've waited way too long to get that space on the shelf and to build that brand awareness and consumer repeat loyalty. In the cases that I've seen, there are many consumers finding that the alternative solution actually solved whatever their purchase requirement was. And there's a real risk that a brand now may in fact lose that loyal consumer to a brand that they tried through an out of stock position. So as we think about our go forward new normal, preserving brand loyalty and brand availability to consumers is something that I think every CPG company needs to put very high on the burner.
Andrea, I'm gonna jump in there because we typically see about an 8% out of stock rate. We're hearing that from an industry perspective that's heading closer to 12. Really much to your point, and so what we're starting to hear from executives is a few things. Number one, this idea of assortment optimization. So still kind of being in those categories, but having kind of less suppliers, fewer vendors, so that they can guarantee kind of facings on the shelf. Number two, we're hearing from those retailers who had never thought about RFID, this idea of we need to understand that it's in the store somewhere, hopefully on the shelf, if we are fulfilling from the stores. And then thirdly, this idea of a better job of demand forecasting. And so we're hearing, and I know Guy will talk to it, but this idea of whether it's 10 years of technology investment in 10 weeks, 25 years in 25 months. I mean, across the C-suite, we are seeing the permission now that's being granted by the board to go and spend on technology solutions to really take care of some of these challenges that everyone is, I think, talking about much more so in this environment, but they were already challenges.
Totally agree. One thing around it is if I combine the three messages, the fact that it's not on the shelf doesn't mean it's not in the store, right? As Deborah just said. And I think that the realogram to planogram, so realogram is what I call the planogram plus combined with the reality, which is not always aligned with what the merchants agreed with the CPG manufacturer. Well, the realogram create that risk not just on the eye of the consumer, but also what about the trade promotion management fund that was agreed on T's and C's with the CPG manufacturer, right? If I'm a CPG manufacturer and I push the inventory to the store, but it's not on the shelf, guess what? I'm going back to my T's and C's and I'll take even more funds away from from the retailer. So I think realogram to planogram, and the fact that it's not on the shelf as out of stock, 8% to 12% is growing. It's a 10-year marching that retailers, all type of retailers, are doing in order to reduce it. So before we go into the technology that will try to help that, any other comments on on-shelf availability and inventory?
Well, I would just echo Deborah's point that this has always been a problem, a retail problem. And we have, as an industry, tended to move to a lot of shiny object technologies at times, rather than address something that's really a root issue. I think what COVID has done for us, okay, is that time compression and then that much more crystal clear focus on the real issues that drive conversion, you know, customer satisfaction, and brand loyalty.
Yeah. And so with that thought, Deborah, what do you see from a technology perspective on, does the regular BI, business intelligence models, are they sufficient or not? What do you see new models coming in? How do you see, retailers are adopting any new type of technology? You mentioned RFID as one, but I cannot imagine RFID working on every aspect. So there's robots, shelf cameras, RFID. All of those generate more data, more BI. What do you see?
That's interesting. I mean, Guy, you've always talked about this idea of right taking the data and turning it into insights. And what the executives have said is right with people not traveling and it's easier to kind of hold internal meetings, that they're now taking the data that they have and really thinking about the insights and the actions that they need to take. So I think BI models, BI is more important than ever. And once again, as you mentioned, right there's a lot of different ways to kind of take this data, but I also think we've heard more and more discussions around this idea of kind of anomalies in data, right? We're starting to see things pop up in different stores. Is this a trend? Is this something we need to pay more attention to? And I'll tell you, I feel that there's this idea of, right, we have a challenge, let's find a solution and let's do it very quickly. So and they're interested in investing in things. I mean, as we talk to more and more companies, right, you've got to have a really quick turnaround. This idea of kind of, 12 months is just not working right now because we have everybody's attention. So anything that can be done and kind of, and I'm sure, Andrea, with your, kind of board seats, 16 weeks, 24 weeks. But this idea, Guy, of exactly what you brought up is like, let's take this challenge and find the technology to kind of throw against it. And we, right, there are funds available to do this. And so I think that the getting everyone on board, which is, kind of much easier to do in this environment from a C-suite perspective, but then highlighting what technology, and I think they are evaluating different solutions, but they are trying to narrow those down to two or three and then implementing them very quickly. I mean, I think for holiday 20, from what I'm seeing already, and once again, Andrea, I want to hear your thoughts. We're already seeing a lot of new technologies being investigated, a lot of new, if you will, technology providers and decisions that people really want to make in the next few weeks because they want to have these ready for, let's call it, 9:30, September 30th, that everyone's geared up for holiday. I don't know, Andrea, what do you think?
Yeah, and I'm seeing it in real time, where you have projects that were in discovery that have gone really into implementation. In some cases, in less than 3 to 4 weeks. So technologies that are very agile, that can be implemented very quickly. Again, things really focused at what matters to consumers versus what is maybe an interesting project to explore. Those are coming to the top of the list, and clearly the ability to interface very, very quickly with existing platforms. Those are the things that I'm seeing. But the appetite to deploy is very real, but it is going towards companies that can deploy quickly.
Yeah, I would add, if I can, the fact that there's so many new supply chain designs out there. If you look at the constipation of the supply chain today, of getting product out of China and the usurious pricing for air freight and for management of product, this idea of scarcity, I think, Andrew, you had kind of alluded to it, creates weird dynamics, right, for the shopper. They're grinning and bearing it. I would argue that whether we talk about BI or we talk about the flexibility of the supply chain, that CPG partners with retailers need to really quickly be able to adapt to new sources of supply, new countries of origin, new logistics, new packaging, reuse. That can be facilitated by BI. Certainly, the other piece is look, the shopping habits and behavior, both on shelf and experiential. You need things that, to your point, that need to be deployed quickly, but ultimately don't need to go through too much filtering. With the amount of social media and insight that's out there, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that consumers are furious. And if they had some other option, they would take it. The retailers that are successful are going to be able to get great messaging that says our stores are safe, they're secure, they're going to be well managed, they're well stocked. You're going to find what you need. You can follow the path for traffic, and everything's going to be great. I think that BI, like all of the technology, is not a surrogate for being on the ground. I'm really interested to see what technology is going to enable management to be able to look really quickly and say, boy, we changed the layout of the store. It's not working. We need to fix it.
And now, Dave, if you think about also focusing and trend, there's been 2-3 months of chaotic type demand, right? Both up and down. We've seen it even in the do-it-yourself, right? It's a little bit back to baseline, but it's not yet fully there. How would you recommend them to sense demand and actually act on that data rather than continue an analysis paralysis? And any, as you call it, I like it, the supply chain conservation.
We've seen it. I think it's just been exacerbated now. So again, I think you can't beat, and maybe we're going to allude to this, but you can't beat having excellent employees in store and management that are really caring about their consumer and marrying the insight, right? The volatility of outlier demand can't be just taken at face value because we know the marketplace is all over. I think the opportunity is marrying the technology to strong personnel that are really looking at how people are behaving, what insight are you taking, that it's not being filtered too heavily. We did a lot of work with social media scraping. My argument is that there's still this importance of having a direct relationship with the customer and then being able to marry that at the store operations level as to what needs to be adjusted.
So working better with the retailers, right, around that data on the basket and what they're buying. Deborah?
Yeah, I would say, David, I think that that's more important than ever. We've heard from many of the luxury retailers who, don't have e-commerce, that what they've started to do in this environment, and it's actually been unbelievably successful. So it goes back to kind of the question that was asked earlier. Some of these models that, kind of were tried and, probably make it to the other side. But what they've been doing is virtual selling. And so your sales associate calls you, shows you kind of the new product line, and then ultimately you're transacting directly with that person. I mean, in my opinion, right? If we think in some ways we're almost bringing back, right, the traveling salesperson. And so, if I'm doing curbside or pickup, and let's say if I can book a slot with somebody who I like, and then I can also, kind of tip them or compensate them, they can tell me about the new items in the store. It ends up bringing a different type of relationship and also a different type of entertainment to shopping. But I do think that we're starting to see some of these newer models, and that ultimately it's great for the sales associate, it's great for the retailer, and it's great for the consumer. So it's win-win-win all the way.
So would you call that clienteling, or like the new wave of clienteling, even in grocery,
Yeah.
right? Someone picks up the bags and say, hey, did you try that new soup? I put one for free in your bag. I mean, that's clienteling from fashion in grocery.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean,
Hey, Deborah, sorry, I couldn't agree more with that. I think it's a brilliant point that, I've been working with some clients that have been very personal sales space that had historically been, you need to go into the store or the salon to be able to be helped. And just by accident, when you have no salons open, no opportunities, the epiphany is this is a really personal and individual experience. And if we can do digital proposals and digital insight and give education, the conversion is incredible. So I think that there, to your point, Guy, there's not just basic items to be able to do clienteling, but I think there is this epiphany of, wow, there's some products that people may have been reticent to buy in store, or may not want it. They want to be educated more about it, and they're higher value. And that power is evident in terms of conversion and new channels. The question will be, how do you scale it properly? And how do you educate your
Associates.
staff to be able to do it
Yeah.
effectively?
Yeah, and again, if it's a minimum wage, temporary type staff, you need something to automate them and guide them. And if it's more professional, well, you need the expense, which is a great segue to the next topic around labor, right? Unemployment has been on the rise right now, obviously because of the COVID-19, but we're all very optimistic. We believe that it will come back. Let's say even in a year, it will come back to the same kind of level that we used to before, hopefully even less than a year. So how would you see all of that play out for retailers in short, medium, and long term from the type of labor and how to manage that? Well, let's start with Andrea Weiss. What's your perspective?
Well, Guy, I liked very much how you laid out this slide for us to think through, because I think we do need to think about this in those exact buckets. What's happening short term, what's happening medium term, and then be planful for the longer term. Certainly we know we're living it now real time on what the short term is and was for many of the retail and restaurant employees who were laid off like in mass. And we're seeing slow rollout as people are bringing people back. We've seen people deployed into functions that they actually never did before as being called back and having to accelerate training and staffing to compensate for reduced hours and reduced traffic. That's the short term. I think people are doing that blocking and tackling. I don't think that is being driven too much by technology in most cases. It's about survival. Medium term, I think that you will begin to see an appetite to how to then build those changes that have happened into a business model. And I'm not certain that we will see returns for all job functions. And I think you will see a re-education of some employees and retraining and repurposing. But I'm concerned about some of the folks' jobs really being permanently lost. On the long term, well, BI was before COVID, it resided, as I said, on a project list somewhere. It was someone's pet project. Today, I'm seeing CEOs interested in this topic because their fundamental business model is going to change, and they're going to need to make investments to figure out how to be very agile in redeploying labor, working with fewer people simply because of safety issues. And so long term, I see a development of the workforce that is going to be very much tied into the ability to deploy with speed, and where BI is going to become vital.
So, Andrew, I want to kind of step in there because I think there are several things happening right now in labor. So, I actually spoke, it was like 2010 at the Chamber of Commerce in Fayetteville, Arkansas, about this idea that we needed to reskill labor. And I feel that it's 10 years ago, right? I mean, and I don't feel that we've seen what we needed to in order to give people the skills that they need for today. So hopefully we together can work in retail. And as we are seeing manufacturing come back to the US. I mean, it is a fact. We're seeing it. It does so many things, as David talked about, the supply chain. It really allows us to eliminate some of these challenges, and certainly the windows. So that's number one, is we do need to reskill. Secondly, we are seeing right now, and we've talked to many executives, that cost of labor is high in retail stores, right? These are truly frontline workers. They are taking a risk going into work every day, and they need to be compensated appropriately, whether it's hazard pay or however you want to look at that. But I think that's incredibly critical. And then third, if we think about kind of long term, what does the relationship between a sales associate and the consumer look like? What is the purpose? Is it just kind of an in-store relationship, or does it extend beyond? Because I have to say, right, when we're spending so much time, my phone's here somewhere, on our phones, right? I we're starved for those relationships. So I think that utilizing this opportunity to try some things in the consumer, right? If you try it and fail, people will applaud you because you tried something. I don't know, David, what do you think?
Uh, I totally agree, and I think having this trial and error. I mean, what's interesting is the importance pyramid in terms of labor cost versus need has never been more kind of topsy turvy. I think the idea of that on one hand, how is a consumer going to interact with a shopper's going to interact with staff, I think is really interesting. I think being able to realign the store operations and experience so that there's value and that you're creating simplicity and better messaging and a better overall experience, I think is so critical. And then having the technology, I think, Deborah, your highlight, to potentially facilitate new relationships, because I think people are stir crazy. They want to get out, but they just don't want to be inefficient. They don't want to be frustrated. And I think the great retailers coupled with CPG in this particular case is, what's the new model? How are we going to facilitate a relationship that's going to be engaging and valued?
So
Yeah, too often optimizing labor means simply cutting cost. And what I'm hearing both Deborah, you say, and David say is that we have a responsibility to retool our workforce, and these technologies can really help us in that regard.
Well put.
and so that's a great segue to the last slide. And by the way, guys, we did get some questions, so we'll start answering them soon. If you have any question, please use the Q&A box. We will likely take your question, and if we would not, we will then follow through on the blog, making sure that we answered all of your questions. But speaking about optimizing labor, and I like it, Andrea, I really like what you just said. Optimizing inventory, hey, just let's cut the inventory. Optimizing labor, just like let's cut the labor. Obviously, it will cut the cost, but it will also have some devastating issues. So how do you see, technology, data, leveraging everything we just talked about, on-shelf availability, curated assortment and services to the customer, having the right labor, guiding the right labor? What is your kind of last take before we go to the Q&A? Deborah?
I've always thought that, and hey, once again, Andrea sat in many boardrooms, as have I. And, first of all, I think they can be incredibly more efficient because everyone bats around ideas, but we have data to make those decisions, right? I think that this is, I may like borrow this slide because it's so good, right? Data doesn't lie, right? It tells us the truth and it tells us at a point in time and historically, but it also can be predictive. And this idea of, utilizing that to take this prescriptive approach, I think that this is table stakes. So I love this as kind of our concluding slide. And I think that we are seeing investments right now in this area. And I do think, David and I chatted about it. We will see mistakes along the way, but I think that that's okay. We just need to kind of move up and to the right. And as we think about holiday 20, this is, to me, these are the areas where I would suggest that retailers invest because they will have very quick paybacks. They will also give you the data and the insights that you need. And I think ultimately your shareholders will reward you. And there's no greater reward like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I typically quote Jim Barksdale. He used to be the CEO of Netscape, and he was oftenly coming into meetings and says, if we have data and facts, let's talk about that. If we don't, let's just take my opinion.
I would add to that, if I could add to that. Deborah, the funny thing, I love this slide too, but data doesn't lie, but people do. And I think that the challenge is that prescriptive approach and the quality of the data and the level of independence that is offered by organizations, I think is going to be really important. So it is everything that I've experienced, both board otherwise, is the crushing amount of data and availability, the ability to digest it, the ability to reduce time lag, and then having real ownership and independence about what does the data mean, the interpretation. I think that's going to become, it is critically important, but never more so, because we're challenging a lot of orthodoxy around how retailers have operated and around consumers behave, and everybody wants to jump to a conclusion. The reality is, and I think Deborah, you alluded to this as well, it's a little bit of trial and error. It's about being excited about finding new ways and not getting so hung up about being right, because I'm not sure the consumer even knows what they want right now. I think that we've got this amazing diversity, and the smart organizations are not going to be terrified by it. They're going to be excited by it. And the ones that I've interacted with that are doing well, it's like they fell by serendipity into a new category or a channel or new approach. That to me is really exciting. The ones that are frightened by the future, they're not going to survive.
But David, you brought up something incredibly important, which I think that we are seeing this, and it goes back to data, this idea of personalization. And there is a lot of data, especially if you're a warehouse club, right? You have data on every transaction. So the more that we can, I mean, hey, how many of us, right? If you have a pet, right? They always give you the ad for the other pet. I have 2 dogs. I always get ads for cats. And so, right, I live in a Manhattan apartment. I keep getting ads for hot tubs. So to have this feeling, right, that the retailer knows you, right? They know me and I'm giving them permission, right? If you can serve up, right, what I'm most likely to purchase, and you can save a lot of my time in terms of sorting through all of these little black dresses that aren't the ones that I want. I just think, and also too, right, we are all, kind of this idea of diversity, right? We all want something different. And if the retailer can deliver that to us, it really then becomes our retailer.
Yeah, it's more than just localization. It's more about personalization. And we've been talking about that and out of stock for the last 10, 12 years. I think cutting through the bias, Dave, that you mentioned, it's like the Moneyball, right? Moneyball come to retail in a way. Cut through the bias, just and listen to understand, don't listen to respond. Don't come with a solution, but cut through the bias and the engine will tell you things. Andrea, anything to add?
Yeah, I actually think of this as a moment in time where we could actually think about technology not as technology, but actually allowing us to return to the basics of what retail is, which is that consumer relationship, the personalization that you're hearing from Deborah, and use this as a reset for ourselves on using technology to get back to the most basic things. I mean, we're talking about in stock, we're talking about customer relationship, service, sell. How long have associates, for instance, in the labor force been telling us, I used to be a sales associate and now all I'm doing is fulfilling online orders and I'm never actually speaking to consumers and I'm walking consumers out the door without a purchase. Our associates were telling us that, okay, were we listening? Okay, this is a time where we're all listening better, okay? And if data and the use of data can allow us to get back to the basics of our industry, we will have a strong industry coming out of this.
Yeah, so let's take some questions because I've seen some amazing questions. So thank you, everyone. But if you think about what you just mentioned, micro fulfillment, we've seen a high demand. Clienteling that you just mentioned, Deborah, on-shelf availability, data. I mean, there's so much that executives and retail need to prioritize. What will be, through reopening and post-COVID, the priority for the top retailers on technology list? Andrea, what would you see as your technology list on the priority side? Micro-fulfilling, clienteling, on-shelf, anything else?
Well, I think first and foremost, most retailers are collapsing channels, and I don't even want to say omni-channel. They're just collapsing channels, and so technologies that allow that. I think real insights on consumer behavior have been talked about for a long time. I think that is absolutely where people will be, and actually inventory integrity because of the real challenges that the supply chain has faced.
I think that if I could add to Andrew's point, I think having real insights on the consumer experience and on the availability of staff and kind of what the experience in terms of interactions are. I think there's so much listening. I think, Guy, you had mentioned this, so much listening that's required about understanding when the consumer's coming in, what do they want? How are they interacting? What are the questions they're having? Anything that can allow that truth to be told and without latency and without too much filtering or manipulation, I think is going to be really important because we're going to move pretty quickly from this scarcity and that purpose built shopping to why would I ever go back there? you've got to find a way to be able to provide a great experience. And I think this is the opportunity to really listen and learn.
I'm gonna take the other side of this, which is I think that we are seeing anything that's a quick win and reducing returns. So anything around kind of mobile body scanning, virtual showrooms, even like 3D design. So that's kind of number one in terms of what we're seeing. Like that's the question this week, right? And so every week, Guy, it's a different question. But this week it's around kind of virtual, and we've actually been working with a lot of Israeli startups who are doing some really interesting things here. Secondly, the other one is kind of about, a lot of folks have already placed their orders for holiday, but for a while there, it was all about demand forecasting. And the week before that, I'm just going in reverse order, it was assortment optimization. There's been a lot around kind of RFID and, kind of this idea of on-shelf availability, computer vision, right? That was like 5 weeks ago. And so I think that, to me, next week, I do think that we might see, because we've heard it bubbling up, right? It hasn't been the topic. I do think, Guy, micro fulfillment, because we're hearing that especially as it relates to grocery, but we're now hearing that more from the fashion retailers, because this idea of how can I, right? If somebody needs a pair of shoes or pants or something in like 2 hours, let's be able to get it to them. If they can wait a week, right? You can optimize your whole entire supply chain. And so I think that there's just a lot more intelligence being put into things. But I do think, and it's one thing I want to conclude this with, is we are seeing sustainability for profitability's sake underlie everything right now. And I think when we started off 2020, it was all sustainability just for sustainability's sake. And so I do think that you end up having a more purpose-driven consumer, and consumers feel that retailers are listening to them because sustainability, is one of the most important aspects of their shopping journey right now. So I have to applaud retail because, like I said, every single week it's a new topic. And the fact that they've been able to, kind of adapt is nothing short of amazing.
Great. Do we have time for one last question? Let's have a round of answers around that, and then we can conclude. So, from all of your observations, is there a specific retailer or a specific class of retailers that you would say these guys are handling those challenges of reopening and satisfying the consumer needs better than others? So, not just the technology itself, but do you have a brand or a way, an example on how to do it the right way? Dave?
I have a few, but you're probably gonna hate me for saying it, but I think some of these essential retailers have been doing a fabulous job. I actually think I've been doing a lot of startup work and going to the bank pretty often, and I've been impressed with the personalization, the communication, the care of having to go in each day, and you have some of the most fragile people that are still going into the banks. So the way that they're creating the concierge kind of relationship for older, senior citizens, being able to schedule appointments and have quick follow-up, being able to help with transactions, but do it safely and securely. The amount of protective equipment that's been out there, and then the creating the environment that's safe and secure. I think all of that has actually been something that has been helpful to me in thinking about other retailers operating, because these few that have to operate really quickly and not really shut down, I think are informative for more of the traditional retail, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if you haven't had the opportunity to visit a Lowe's or a Walmart to see the kinds of activities that they have put in place, it's quite impressive. And I think everyone will learn from something there. On the apparel side, a very simple thing that I saw that might be helpful to those that are on the apparel side of the industry was the steaming of clothes between a try-on. Every single garment being steamed because the heat would kill any potential virus. So very simple, basic things, but people have innovated and put them in place.
I mean, there's truly innovation everywhere, and whether it's essential or non-essential, I don't even like using that word, but it's called essential in fashion. But this idea, we're seeing a lot of virtual try-on, because I do think, Andrea, that it just kind of brings in so much complication. So whether it's virtual try on in beauty, right? And when you think about it, so many of these beauty retailers, it was all about the experience of having somebody kind of, I mean, and we've seen pictures from other countries, right? Where we're just how they're doing. I mean, and they're still doing business, right? They're just in business in a different way. And so this idea of virtual try on, virtual showroom, having a better idea of kind of what you want when you actually go to the store, and then the salesperson can ultimately help you make that decision. And then one other thing that we started to see, which is a unique idea and also changes the experience, is this idea of kind of bringing out customers like a fresh product. So bringing something from the back, it's just for them. Nobody else has ever tried it on. It's like, wow, it's mine, right? It was made for me. And so I do think there's this whole kind of these changes that ultimately lead to much more productive retail, much higher margins, but there's different approaches. And I mean, hey, right, there's a cost to having dressing rooms. There's a shrink around dressing rooms. If we move away from that, but the customers know it's going to fit them, everybody wins.
Totally agree. And actually, speaking about Lowe's Foods, they just won the second best grocer through pandemic in nationwide. We actually have a webinar with the head of store operation there, and that's fantastic to see. And so, thank you all. Any other last comment before we conclude,
Guys,
Dave?
Guy,
Yeah,
can I
you
ask
can.
you a question?
Absolutely.
What question have you been getting asked the most by executives? Because I know you talk to a lot of executives as well.
I think the one that I'm getting the most is how quickly can we help or can we implement a solution? Long gone the days that an implementation is for 9 months and then you don't remember, why did I buy that technology? As you just said, in 2 months, I think retailers retransformed, especially the essential. And as you said, essential is depending on who you ask. Some fashion are really essential for some people that I know. And so, I think retail have transformed really quickly, but the executives are looking for, hey, can we just do it really quickly? I've heard some CEOs going to their stores, walking around and looking at out of stock. It says, why this product is out of stock here? I know that we have it in the back. And it's just linked to the labor, linked to inventory accuracy, linked to Zebra mobile computing, and it's just linking all of the above in order to curate and serve the customer better. And it's very simple. We like to think about it as the advisors, simple, but it is a complex environment in retail. And we need to, as the providers, we need to enable to make it simple, make it quicker, and making long-lasting ROI. And that's what we do every day, as you know, Deborah. Thank you so much for being here with me. I mean, you would hear a loud applause from everyone if we would actually be in a real conference. So looking forward to see all of you face to face really, really soon. And see you soon. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Guy, Andrea, and David.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.